Well, welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by Anita Rocha da Silveira, director of Medusa. It's very cool to talk with you.
Thanks.
Yeah. It's opening July 29th in New York City, and then it's going to play some other places down the road. It's very exciting. I got to see it at BUFF, Boston Underground Film Festival, and that was a very cool experience. Have you seen it with an audience yet?
So, no, I don't like watching the film after it's over.
Interesting.
But in the premiere, I had to stay there. It was a festival rule in Cannes. And sometimes I like to sneak in and I watch the ending. In one or two festivals I watched it. But for me now, after the film is done, I prefer not watching because then I will feel like changing something.
Interesting.
And during the post-production process, we have to watch the film so many times to check if everything's okay, that at some point you can't stand watching it again.
Right. Or else you'll just keep messing with it, I assume. It's never finished. You're just done.
Yes.
Yeah. So for people not aware, can you give them an idea of what Medusa is about?
It's difficult for me to put it together in just a few words, but I would define it's a horror comedy musical fantasy about a group of young ultra-right women from Brazil, especially one Mariana that you have to transform to try to save herself.
Well, it's interesting that you said all those different genres, and that's what I like about festivals a lot of times. It's movies that either don't fit in a genre or they fit in multiple genres. Is that ever an issue, though, when you're going to a festival, like maybe it doesn't fit in the horror festival or, to find its place?
Actually, the genre situation in Medusa was more a problem to finance. A lot of institutions said no because, and the feedback was, you have to pick one genre. You can't mix genres. And I used to write intention notes explaining my intention is to make genres. I'm inspired by David Lynch and Jordan Peele and these filmmakers, and they mix genres. Mm-hmm. But most of people said no. And at the festival circuit, I didn't feel, and it was the opposite. A lot of people like the film because it mixed genres. It's something that a lot of people compliment about Medusa, is that I don't commit to one. It's a film that has a little bit of everything that I like, and it's not and I think especially as a filmmaker from Brazil, it takes so much time for us to make a film, to finance a film, that I have to put there everything that I love. So that's why for me it's very important to mix genres, because I can't commit with only one. And I don't know when I'm doing a film again. So I have to put everything that I like in one film.
And I loved it. And that's the kind of movies I like. Brazil itself, does a movie like Medusa, how does it play there? Do people like these kind of movies?
It was not released commercially in Brazil. So far, we don't have still a budget to launch the film. But it will be a small release in Brazil. But basically, because we don't have the structure, we don't have the budget here. Medusa is a very low budget film, even for Brazil. I hope it's released soon, but so far we're waiting for a funding to come over so we can launch Medusa. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, to have more of a small launch in Brazil.
Now, is there any personal inspirations for the story?
Personal? No, the film was more inspired by things I read in the news. My first feature, Kill Me Please, was more personal. This one, I said, no, I wanted to write characters that are different from me. And the starting point was some news I read about a group of girls ganging up to beat another girl that they consider promiscuous. And that, for me, had a lot to do with the conservative rise in Brazil. And so I want to talk about the structural sexism, about machismo in the society, and that also made me remind of Medusa myth, because in the origin of the myth, Medusa was punished by Athena, the virgin goddess, because of the loss of her purity, and was transformed into this horrible creature. So when I read this news about girls beating another girl, and it was important to make the girl look ugly, like cut the face, cut the hair, that made me remind of Medusa. So that was the starting point, more to talk about the contemporary Brazil, about the ultra-right in Brazil, but it's not. It was personal in the meaning to talk about Brazil and things that that I was seeing in the news, that I was seeing online. I made a big research in the churches, in the ultra-right YouTubers, but it's not. But my first feature was more about my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because I actually looked up the origins of the Medusa myth after watching the movie. And I actually, I knew of Medusa, but I didn't know until I looked it up about that, that it was, she was punished by Athena. And sometimes in movies you see, the men looking down on the women, like slut shaming, but you don't see it too often. I think your movie's you're more unique that way, where it's the women doing it to the other women.
Yeah, because I think for me, it was important to talk about how the sexism and the machismo is also part of us, because we grow up in a society that's rotten. So it's the way we're brought up. And here with the conservative rise in Brazil, I come across with a lot of YouTubers. For example, one that was a young woman, very popular, and her motto is like, "I fight for the end of feminism. Feminism is ruining the world. Women should be submissive to men." A lot of makeup tutorials that when you start to watch, in the end of it has a very conservative message about women being submissive to men. So I want to talk about this character, this woman that's also repeating this speech about being submissive to men. Mm-hmm. So this environment started to fascinate me. I started to research, and that was something that kept me moving, to talk about some other women that are very different from me, and to try to understand them somehow.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it does make the movie topical here, because there's a rise in a lot of that in the United States. So
the ultra right is everywhere. They are, and what I'm observing in Brazil is like the past few years, one year was worse than the other. For example, when Bolsonaro was elected.
When you mentioned the makeup, I actually think that's one of the most powerful scenes in the movie, when she's trying to film the tutorial together, and then at the end she wipes the makeup off her face. And I also thought, was that filmed in one long shot?
Yes, but the eye you have it's two shots, because Mari appeared with the image, and the black eye was in post-production. Because we tried to do on set. We made a lot of tests, but Lara's skin, that plays Michelle,
Did you have her in mind for the lead?
Yes, I had her in mind since a very early stage of the film. I don't know, it was something that really came natural for me to start writing and start to think about Mari, and then things start to try to get some form. She's a very talented actress, and in my first features, she did a secondary role. And for me, it was very nice and important to write something for her to star.
Mm-hmm. And when you presented her with the script, she was on board right away?
No, I made her test. I didn't tell her. I made her a test, but was it's her name. This is also Mariana in real life. It's not only the
right. Yeah.
But I made her read for the whole. But then she was very excited. She was almost giving up on acting at that point. She was in film school. Now she's back on track on acting. She just did a TV show for Disney here in Brazil, and that I think soon will go to Disney Channel.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very cool. What about the colors in the movie? It's a lot of interesting colors, and I also think that raises the production value and also gives it like an otherworldly feel.
Yeah, I think in my first feature, so for us it's very important to use the colors on set and to go bold with them, to construct this world that's like a parallel universe that doesn't look like life at is. That's something different from Medusa. So yes, that was very important to us. And then to commit with the green, with the red, and all the other colors that we use. Yeah.
And when I saw it at the theater, I watched it again for the interview on my computer, but watching it in the big screen, the colors really pop. And, that's the best way to watch a movie. And the music too. Now, was it written specifically for the movie, or is this music that was around before?
All the more climate songs were made for the film. The composer was Bernardo Zeda. He worked in all my films, and he was pretty much inspired by Goblin, by Carpenter, Tangerine Dreams. Some of the musics are versions. All the songs that the girl band sings, they are versions that I wrote. The one in the beginning and in the end is a version of a Brazilian pop songs from the 90s, and then I made this more evangelical. And the one in the middle and also in the end in the credits is two different versions of House of the Rising Sun that is public domain. So I wrote the versions. Yeah, so I don't know if it's an original song, but at least and also Baby It's You. I work with the musical producer and we record a version for the film. So yeah, so it's a mix of some songs we record again. It was a way to save some money and always also to give a face to the songs to make it more close to Medusa. Others were composed for the film.
Now, do you have a background at all in writing music?
No, but I grew up in a youth orchestra. I played the flute and the clarinet, so it's something that's really my next step, I think, is to do a musical. But music is a part of my life, and I love playing bands and playing instruments.
Okay, cool. And how about the horror genre itself? Using the horror genre to talk about political or social commentary. What is it about the horror genre that you like?
I don't know. I think I'm more a fan of the fantastic, of trying to write and do something that's bigger than life. I like when there's not so much commitment with the reality. Even in the case of the film that is inspired by the reality, I think that's important to get away so we don't, because the reality is not so good here in Brazil. So I like this. For example, a filmmaker that I really love the way he does that, for example, Jordan Peele, that the films are inspired by some situations in real life, but then he gives a completely different twist into it.
Yeah, because it's still a movie that people are, you want them to watch as a film. So you can't. Is that hard to balance where you have like something you want to talk about, but also you want it to work as a movie, so you don't want to preach to people while you're watching the film?
I don't know. For me, I think it comes naturally because I personally prefer films that are in between reality and fantasy. I'm a big fan, for example, of David Lynch. So I don't know. For me, I think something that comes more natural. I would have much more difficult to tell a story in a realistic way. Because when I start to imagine everything, I put a lot of fantasy into it, and then and people are singing, and there is blood, and people are levitating. When I start to think about an idea, then for me, it's very easy to go over the top. I have much more difficulty in the realistic aspect.
Interesting, yeah. You mentioned David Lynch, and all his movies have that dreamlike quality. I think all the colors in Medusa and stuff, it gives it a similar feeling.
Yeah, no, I'm the biggest David Lynch fan, and I really like the way he mixed genres. That was also a big inspiration for Medusa in all my films. I really like the way he goes from one genre to the other. Yeah. Like it can be a horror, can be a musical, can be a comedy. He do it all.
And what was the thought process and how much to scar Mary's character? Because she has a scar, but it's not necessarily like covered in scars. So I think if you went too far, it gives it a different feeling. Where if it's just a sort of a small scar.
This scar actually was more a realistic scar. Was the make? I want a bigger one, but the makeup team convinced me to do a realistic one, so people would believe more. So the scar and all its stages are pretty much realistic.
Yeah, you always want it bigger. Yeah,
I want a bigger, more like. But then if you go more up and down, it's more difficult because she would be moving her mouth and it would start to pop out.
Right. It'd be much more gruesome film, yeah.
And I think for this girl, that scar is super big. Even it's not so big for that character, that's so gigantic. But then with Melissa, makeup went really over the top. Then was someone that was burned, and we went all there.
Yeah. How did you get involved in filmmaking in Brazil?
Here in Brazil, I didn't went to film school, but I went to a degree that's very common here. That's called social communication. Here in Brazil, we we apply to college already for a career. We make a test for this career to get in. So with 17, we have to commit with careers. And then, but at that point in college, I came from a family that everybody works with math and economics and engineering. So for me, it was very difficult to see myself as a freelancer, a director. I really want to work with the film industry, but I really also want to have a steady job. So at first hand, I want to go to television to work as editor, script writer, something like that. But then in the end of the college, I ended up doing a short film that was more something like I really have to tell this story. Let's have fun. I did it with my friends, very, very low budget. This short ended up going to a lot of film festivals. I got some money prizes. With the money prizes, I did a second short that got a very big money prize, and then I did a third short. And then when I was directing movies, but it was not something that was planned, like I wanted to be a director, right, or something that ended up happening.
Yeah, well, that's very cool. And congratulations that you continue to make films. So Medusa's opening July 29th in New York City, and then it's coming in a few other places. Where can people follow you and Medusa to see, where they can see the movie?
Maybe Marisa, better, but for me, my Instagram is Anita Rocha da Silveira. It's my name. It's easy. There is a music box also on Instagram that people can follow to know about the US release. But
yeah. I'll find out and I'll put the links here with the.
Okay, so there's my Instagram and the music box Instagram for sure that people can follow and get to know more.
All right, very good. I'm currently suspended for 30 days from Facebook, so I can't post anything there. But
I have a Facebook, but I don't check so much. And I have a Twitter, but I only use Twitter to read news. I don't post. For me, the only one I'm posting now is Instagram. If I have more than one, I go crazy.
I understand. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go follow you.
It's so long in the social networks, but for my Instagram, I try to post everything from Medusa, and I know that Music Box is on Instagram and Twitter for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted to say, my friend Annabelle, I saw the movie with her in Boston, and she loved it, and wanted me to mention that to you.
Oh, great. Thanks, Annabelle.
Yeah. And thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And continued success.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks. Let's hang up here. Bye.